Welcome to another episode of The Unconditioned Life with me, Linda Downey. If you're ready to leave the stress and the pain of your past so that you can create a joyful and vibrant life for your future, then you are in the right place. Subscribe, follow, and enjoy the episode. Hello, we are live. Hi, welcome. This is Linda Downey, and we are in an episode of The Unconditioned Life. And today I want to talk about self-love, self-acceptance. How do we cultivate that? What does that mean to me? What I think it really is the best definition for anybody to look from. And why is it so difficult? So some thoughts on that. So this is streaming in multiple places. If you get a chance, please say hello. I may not see that because I can't see all the comments everywhere, but say hello now. I'll go back and look. And if you listen or watched the replay later on the podcast or wherever you see this streaming, I will definitely go back and say hello back and also answer any questions. So I've been talking about self-love all this week because it's the week before Valentine's Day, and it just seems like a good place to anchor ourselves into Valentine's Day, whether you have a Valentine or not, because whatever your status is in terms of a relationship, the only relationship that you will have until your very last breath is you. You are the only person that you're going to be in relationship with for sure till the very end of your life. We don't know how long we'll have any other relationship. And take it from me as a mother who's lost a child. We just don't know how long we have any relationship. So this one, your relationship with yourself, is the only one you've got for sure. And so loving yourself and cultivating self-love is the biggest investment that you can make in yourself, because when you are living a life that comes from self-love, it changes everything. It changes how you show up in the world. It changes what you're willing to accept from other people. It changes your choices and how difficult life can feel for you when you love yourself, right? Think about people that you love. Think about if you're a parent, you don't make choices to make your kid's life harder. You make choices out of love for them. Not that easy is the best thing for kids, right? Sometimes we want them to learn through growth. But even in that, it's like, what's really the best for my child? So looking at ourselves through that same lens, when we love ourselves, we will make choices. That means, who do we stay in relationship with? Romantic relationships or other relationships. That means, what do we decide for ourselves? You know, even just in terms of a job or where we're willing to live. Are we good enough, or are we like, I love myself? So as you're coming on, please say hello. Thank you for listening. And I want to define for you my vision of self-love. And if you're paying attention in our self-love workshop, my friend Christy and I are doing a 5-day free workshop. I talked about this morning. So some of you may not be there. So self-love, in our culture, we have a very consumer culture, consumer oriented, and we also have a culture that's very much focused on how we feel, our five senses, our indulging ourselves. So self-love often looks like, oh, I'm going to take the day off and I'm going to go have a spa day, or I'm going to go buy something, like, oh, this feels really good. I just bought this thing and I feel really good about myself, or other kinds of experiences. But it's a very consumer, and it's an in the moment sort of sensory way that we take care of ourselves. But I'm going to offer a different perspective, that self-love is really a willingness to get to know yourself and to listen to your internal guidance system and to know who you are at a deeper level than what you do out in the world or what your identity is in relationship to other people. No, getting to know yourself at a deeper level than that and being willing to accept who you know yourself to be. And that means the good parts and the bad parts. I had a client who just about a week ago reached out to me. We just doing some one-on-one work, and she was like, I have some shame about something that I did, I think a while back, actually, several years ago. And we talked about it. And I said, listen, we all have things about ourselves that aren't great. That's what we call our shadow selves. But it's not that they're not great. It's part of who we are as a human being. So self-love and self-acceptance means I recognize I have the great external parts of me that I'm so happy to show out in the world. And I also have the shadow parts of me, the things that I've held shame about, the things that I don't really want to tell anybody because I worry that it would change how they see me. Those parts of us, that's all that makes us up human. So having self-love is saying, I'm going to accept that. I'm going to look and see what that shadow self is telling me, what those parts of me are sharing about me that are going to allow me to grow and expand. So self-love is a consistent willingness to get to know ourselves. It's active. It's active, meaning I stand in witnessing myself as I'm moving through my day. What are my thoughts that I keep saying to myself? What are my feelings? Like witnessing that. And where do I want to go? Otherwise, we're just programming, right, from the past, and we're not really present to who we're being. And then we're not loving ourselves. We're not even paying attention to ourselves. So self-love is active. Self-love is consistent. Self-love is a willingness to accept, and to accept with compassion. So one of the things, particularly in the spiritual work that I do with my clients, we're about 4 weeks into a 12-week spiritual program. And I think it was last week, we talked about what's in it for me, love. WIIFM. You could write it down. WIIFM. Most people love from a what's in it for me love. Oh, hey, Charm. Charm says hi. Hey, Charm. And then somebody else who just shows up as Facebook user, starting therapy Monday, coming out of a toxic relationship, trauma bond, and more. I'm listening to you need to relearn things like self-love, healthy relationships, and build myself up. Yes, that's exactly what we do, because when we've been traumatized, so this is a little bit, I'm just going to take a tangent and respond to that. When we've had experiences in our life that caused pain, we needed to find a way to cope with them. That's the trauma response. So we find a way of coping, and then we're operating through that coping mechanism. And then we often find other people who are also operating through their own coping mechanisms. And we fit like a puzzle piece. We're a match. Except that now you have two people who are not growing and expanding and accepting and loving, but rather two people coping and using that mechanism. And if someone wants to shift out of that mechanism, the relationship doesn't work anymore, because it only worked through that trauma bond or that coping. So I wish you best of luck on moving forward from that. And if you ever want to talk about, I've had a lot of clients who've done therapy. What I do is different than therapy. And it actually is unraveling what we need to in order to have you move forward. So Charm wrote it on WIIFM. What's in it for me? Because people often love from a place of what's in it for me. So I'm in a relationship with you and I love you, or it looks like love, but it's really not, because as soon as you don't do the things that I am expecting you to do. As soon as I feel like you're not giving me the whole reason that I started this relationship for, now I'm not going to love you so much. So it's very conditional. We do the same thing to ourselves. That's why I brought it up, because this conversation is about self-love. So we do the same thing to ourselves. If I'm out here, and I'm doing all the things that I've decided make me a good person, I'm sticking with my diet and I exercise and I'm showing up in the community and I whatever, I love myself. But as soon as I mess up, as soon as I go off the diet, then it's like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm doing this again. See, I'm a loser. I never stick with it. That's not love. That is the same thing as what we do with other people. It's very conditional. As long as I show up perfectly within my expectations, I'll give myself love, but it's really just acknowledgement, waiting for myself to trip up. So when we're talking about self-love, it's compassion. Compassion, curiosity. Wow, why am I doing that? What is this telling me about myself? That's how we get to know ourselves, right? When you meet someone new and you want to get to know them, you're curious. Be curious about yourself and that person in there that has been wounded, that has needed to cope. Be curious about her. And then be willing to accept how she's showing up and to take that as information. So that's, again, self-love. It's active. It's consistent. Because who I was when I was 20 is not who I am now. I'm almost 60, right? So 40 years later, I'm not the same person. Do I consistently love myself through my journey? And I can just answer that for you. There were many, many years when I didn't, when I absolutely did not. So that's why I'm passionate about talking about it now, because how life showed up then versus how life shows up now is wildly different. And I think I said in the beginning of the conversation, it's the best investment you can make, because when you start to be willing to include yourself in your love, life is very, very different. That's when the best outcomes happen. Charm. I was 58. Charm says, if you're not in the same wavelength, Charm is leaving me comments here, and she says I'm almost 60 with exclamation points. I am. I was 58 in December, so I've got 2 years to go. But and a lot of that time I did not love myself, and I didn't even know how to find myself to even get to know her. I thought I did. I knew the outward identity that I had created that I was willing to show the world. That is very different than who you are. And what happens is, when we focus on that outward identity, we pull ourselves away from that authentic self, that authentic place. The more we pull ourselves away, the less in touch, obviously, we are with who we truly are. And then life keeps feeling really hard. Relationships feel really hard because we're connecting with people who probably are not a good match. If we were actually really knowing ourselves, we wouldn't have picked that person. But we picked that person because they filled some other need that was showing up and was, much more in our face than if we looked inward and knew ourselves. So as we're going into Valentine's Day, I'm just going to, invite you, challenge you, whatever it is, to say, you know what, it's time. It's time that I love myself more than I love looking good, that I love myself more than I love making everybody else's life work, that I love myself more than staying a victim to my circumstances, and that I love myself more, that I'm willing to break whatever my family line has been, because a lot of times we're raised in households where the example that we're seeing is not an example of self-love. most of my people are women. My clients are mostly women, although I do work with men too, one-on-one more. But I'm going to speak to the women right now, if there's women listening. Um, we model what our mothers showed us and that example of being a woman. And so a lot of women see examples of, let me make it okay for your father. Let me do no, I got it. Nope, nope, you sit there. No, hush, don't make your father angry. Like we see examples of stuffing down of ourselves to make the household work. Moms who are exhausted and doing it all. And it seems like it's out of love, but it's really out of, if I do this, then I'll feel worthy. If I, or this is how my mother did it. So self-love is being willing to break that lineage, to say, I'm going to release that here and now and not carry that forward. In fact, I'm going to carry forward to my children and to the people coming after me a very different possibility. It's a possibility of whole connection here. So do you love yourself enough to let go of the hold that our parents and grandparents and great grandparents, what messaging we got that pulls ourselves away from who we truly are? So that's my invitation and my challenge as we head into Valentine's Day the next week. And I would love to hear what your thoughts are about that. And also just know, like, this is really the work that I do with clients in a lot of different ways and different levels. So there's deep, really intensive, longer client relationships that I have. And then there's also smaller bites depending on what you're willing and able to do right now. Like, what are you really ready to take on? So if self-love or anything else along the lines of rewiring how you think, along the lines of clearing stuck emotions that don't feel good to stay in, along spiritual healing, anything like that, reach out. I'm happy to let you know what it is that we do and how that could work for you. Okay? So thank you for listening to this episode. It's called The Unconditioned Life because my goal is to help you release the conditioning of your past, release the automatic ways of being, release the messaging that you've gotten from your lineage and from your ancestors, and to create newly and freely from your own place the life that you want. That's the unconditioned life. Okay? So have a great weekend, and I will see you next week, round and about Valentine's Day. All right, take care. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, follow, or leave a kind review. If you are ready to truly leave an overwhelmed life of stress and struggle behind and live as God intended, whole, joyful, and connected, please reach out or go to lindadowneycoaching.com, my website, for more information. Give yourself some grace and kindness today and every day, and I hope to see you on the next episode of The Unconditioned Life.